All right, looks like I am live for our week 4 webinar. So thank you for joining me if you're here, and please let me know if you can hear and see me. Actually, let me turn on the questions here to make sure you can do that. Yeah, I want to make sure you can hear and see me correctly because I am in a new spot yet again. My housing saga continues, and I'm in yet another house while we wait for our new one to be ready for us. But anyway, I won't bore you with those details. The other complication tonight is that I am having some sort of allergic reaction to this new place, or maybe just to moving in general, which seems to happen to me recently. So totally fine, except for my nose is stuffy and makes it hard for me to talk and breathe and all that. So I don't know how annoying it is to listen to me, and if I'm sniffling too much or anything like that. So anyway, for that reason, and another, which was that I realized last time, as the questions last time went up to the, I think, hour and a half mark or so, and I really want to keep these things to an hour, not so much for my sake, but just for the sake of people who are here attending, that the questions part of it can be a focal point of these webinars. I want you to have the ample opportunity to ask your questions of me. So I'm going to try to do the talking presentation portion of this one. Try to keep that to about half an hour, maybe even shorter. We'll see how it goes. But really, with the topic that we're talking about, which is the social issues, family, friends, travel, ordering at restaurants, and anything of that sort and of that variety of question. That's what we're covering tonight. And that's what I'll be talking about. So that stuff to me lends itself more to kind of case-by-case answers than general principles. There just aren't all that many general principles of how do you do something like that. How do you handle situations like that? There are a few, but I think case-by-case specifics is really what that's all about. So I'm going to do this one a little bit differently than usual, and that is that I'm going to try to take questions ongoing as I'm going talking about this stuff, rather than saying, here's all the presentation, then here's all the questions at the end. So I'm encouraging, and I always do encourage you, but I encourage you again this time, even more so, to jump in with your questions as I'm talking about that topic. So if I'm talking about family and friend issues, and you've got questions about, I don't know, how do you get your spouse to eat this way? Or if you're the cook in the house, how do you handle that situation when the rest of your household doesn't want to do it? That's the time to ask that question. Get it in there. I will give time at the end, yes, so that we can do that. But I think really it's going to be better if those things are just kind of right there in the flow, and one kind of leads to the other. I don't know if it's going to work out that way because people often just sort of wait to the end for whatever reason, shyness, I don't know. But that's what we'll do, and we'll just see how it goes. Also, I wanted to announce something that little surprise extra is I do want to do one more of these webinars, just kind of a send-off type thing that basically says, okay, we're done the 30 days, and it just kind of helps you to decide where to go from here. And that answer may be obvious to you based on how you're feeling. You might be counting down the days that you have left till you can go back and eat whatever it was when you started, or maybe not what you were eating when you started, but maybe something that's kind of halfway. Maybe after the second week was where you felt kind of happy and ready to be that. And this past week of being fully vegetarian, if you're on the omnivore to vegan plan, maybe this past week was trying for you, and you find yourself, wanting to have these certain things again, feeling like you're not quite ready to do this. In that case, I encourage you to finish out this program. Like, I do want you to do what we set out to do, and that would mean having this week be a vegan week, completely vegan. I think it's important. It lets you feel the sense of accomplishment and a win. It feels like you didn't fail on your challenge. It feels like you completed a 30-day challenge, and then you decided to go back to where you were, not from a state of in the moment craving something and wanting to eat it, so you eat it, but finishing out the challenge and saying, okay, I did exactly what I said I was going to do. Now, how do I feel? And based on that, what's right for my life at this time? And I don't consider it a failure at all if at that point you decide you're going to go back to where we were at week 2 or week 3, or who knows where is right for you. Because I think, and this has happened in my experience a lot, and I've seen it happen with other people, is that when you make a decision to go back like that, but you have this kind of win under your belt, you experience what it was like, and you leave it with a positive feeling of, I did what I set out to. I think you will gradually approach vegan, or whatever you think is your ideal that you really want to get to. I think you'll get there over the next few months, even without thinking about it, because you've experienced it. You kind of went to that place for a while. You know what it's like. You learned about it. And I think it's pretty easy to kind of slide back is the wrong word, because slide back would be a negative. I'm thinking of this as a positive. You might intentionally go back a week or two when you're done this. But then I think over the next few months, I think you can kind of just gradually shift towards being more vegan. That's how it worked for me. And then finally I got to the point where I said, I'm eating 99% vegan, but I'm not calling myself that. So I'm drawing the line today, and today it's no more cheese. And for now on, I'm vegan. And that it worked out totally fine that way. So that's been my experience. I think it's likely that will happen for you as well. So that's kind of what I encourage you to do. And anyway, I'm gonna have this one more webinar. I don't know if it's gonna be the same Sunday night time slot. It might need to be a different one, just because I didn't plan on this at the outset. I didn't plan to do a 5th webinar, but I realized I think we should do that. I just think it's needed. I think kind of a closure, and as well as advice that says, like, if you're feeling this way, here's maybe the best thing you should do, and if you're feeling this other way, then here's what you should do, et cetera, along with answering your questions about that idea. So that'll be a short one, but we will do one more of these things. And if I have to cut tonight's at all short because of the allergy thing I'm having going on and just having trouble breathing and talking, then we'll kind of catch up, make up for it then. But anyway, I'm going to try to just jump in here. And what I'm going to do is start with a question that was submitted ahead of time. It's not totally on topic, but that's fine, because they don't have to be on topic. But I want to start with it because it, it's just a general principle that kind of runs throughout this whole program. So I think it's a good one. It's from Natasha, and she said, my question is, I've been doing well on the vegan challenge, and at home I eat vegan. And in any case, I have been in that for the last 6 months. I don't find it at all hard to eat vegan at home, but there are some things that I find hard to think I'll never eat again. I know that's not the way to be thinking about it. For example, croissants and certain other pastries. How do I get through this mindset, or is this just something that will change in time? Just to note, she lives in Switzerland, so non-dairy versions of these things that I like to eat on occasions are either non-existent or not great, so that's not really an option. Okay, really good question, Natasha. So let's see. You've got it right that, yes, you don't want to be thinking, I can never eat that again. That's not a good thought to have when you're trying to change a habit. And I'm assuming here, Natasha, that your goal is to actually become vegan. And that would be actually the first place to start. Is I would strengthen that resolve, right? Figure out what is the reason, and I've mentioned this before, but figure out what is the reason that you are doing this. And I don't mean this 30-day challenge, but what's the driving factor for you in becoming vegan? I would try really hard to connect with that. And I've suggested before things like watching movies, documentaries, because that's very easy to do. But you can go way deeper than that. You can go visit an animal sanctuary if the animal stuff is the motivator for you. If it's a health issue, you can go visit that stuff. I don't think a health issue is going to really change you away from a croissant every month or 2 months. Like if it's a very, very rare thing, the impact on your health is literally nothing. Like there is, I think, no difference between somebody who eats a very healthy diet but has a croissant once a month or even once every 2 weeks, and somebody who doesn't do that but eats the same otherwise healthy diet. When I'm talking about their health, right? So if health is your big motivator for going vegan, you're going to struggle to ever eliminate that final croissant, right? And there's no reason to if health is your motivator. If, however, you have the ethical motivation, and I'm guessing that you do, otherwise you wouldn't care that much about eliminating a croissant every month or every 2 weeks or whatever it is, then yeah, there is a difference, right? You want to be able to call yourself and know, more importantly, in your own head, that you are 100% vegan and you eat exactly the way that you feel is right. So what I would say is figure out how you can strengthen that resolve. Just figure out how to make this whole thing mean more to you. And I know it's not an easy thing to do. It's very easy to say that, but then how do you actually go do it? Really immersing yourself in this thing, hanging out with more vegans, reading more books about veganism, not just the diet and how to eat this way and why it's healthy, because that's what a lot of the books are about, but read an animal or an ethical argument book, right? And there are plenty of them. I think Peter Singer has some good ones. There are others. I don't know a lot of names, but because I honestly am not very well versed in those issues at all. I just kind of know how I feel about it, and I do this because it feels right for me, ethically speaking. So, I would do that. I would just sort of immerse yourself, like make that the book that you read once every month, assuming you read a book or two every month. Just make it about veganism, not the same book, but keep reading different books, of course. But I think it just sort of comes to penetrate your mindset, and eventually you're immersed in it, and you're watching documentaries and you're hanging out with people who are like-minded, and eventually you just get to a point where the desire to eat this way perfectly, and I mean perfectly only meaning 100% vegan, not commenting on health-wise perfectly, eventually that outweighs the desire to eat the croissant. And it's not going to be a sudden shift. It's just going to be one day you'll want the croissant, and you might want it the same amount as you always do, but for some reason that day you'll decide not to have it, right? Because of whatever you just read the week before, or whatever documentary, or whatever experience you had the week before. You'll say, I'm not going to do it this time. I just don't want it that badly. And I think once that little hole is poked in this idea that you need a croissant every however so often, I think very quickly that whole idea can crumble, and you'll find that it's not that hard to get to the point where you just don't want it anymore. And then the second part of your question, asking would this just sort of naturally happen over time? Yes. You've only been doing this, eating this way for 6 months, you said. If you get to the point where you've been eating this way for 2-3 years, I highly doubt you're going to want croissants anymore. I'm not saying that they don't still seem good to me when I see a croissant in a Starbucks or wherever, but it's a different kind of seeming good than ever before. It's not seeming so good that I think about having it or want it. It just I don't know. It seems attractive as a food, but on a much deeper level. And I don't just mean ethically. I mean just taste-wise. It just seems like junk food that you don't really want. So it's a hard thing to explain that difference. But really, I think you're fine. I think stay on the path you're doing. If this is what's working for you, don't do the I can never have that again thought. Like just don't do it. Let yourself have the croissant every 2 weeks or every month or whatever it is, and be mindful of it. Notice how often it is. You can even keep a little tally of how often it happens. That kind of increases your mindfulness around a topic. Is a good thing for any kind of habit. Just keep a little tally of when the urge comes up. And I think if you just keep doing that, yes, maybe you'll have a croissant every month for the next 20 months. I don't know. But you'll get to a point where it becomes less frequent because your tastes are changing, because most of the food you're eating is nothing like that kind of food, and it'll just start to seem less attractive to you. So I hope that helps you. There's not an easy answer to that, of course. There's no pill you can take to just make it stop seeming good that I know of. So anyway, hopefully that helps you. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about the social situation stuff. Again, feel free to jump in with questions that are related to that topic, and we'll do that. Try to jump from question to question rather than have me just talking, directly to people who have not asked questions for half an hour or whatever it ends up being. So again, go for it. Jump in with questions if you have them while I'm talking. So the first big issue that I want to address here is family friend stuff, and I've put this together. It's sort of separate, but the idea is dealing with other people who you know, who you presumably respect in some way, or you want their respect in some way, people who matter to you. How do you talk about the diet around them? How do you deal with going to dinner with those people or going to parties that they invite you to or whatever it is? How do you grease the wheels of that situation so that it's not awkward, so that it's not uncomfortable, and so that it's not something that is kind of weighing on you and being an additional factor that's saying this way of living is hard for me and I don't like it, right? Because I think it's quite possible that this single issue, family friend stuff, could cause someone who otherwise is doing great with this kind of diet and loving how they feel and loving how they feel in their head, like how they just feel eating this way and how they feel like it's right and congruent with their beliefs. But a disapproving family member or close friend, that potentially could be the downfall that kind of ruins it. So it's really important, and it's not a simple issue to address. There's not an easy answer to this. Doug and I did a podcast episode about this topic. It was called "How Not to Be the Punchline of the Vegan at a Dinner Party Joke," which is a pretty long title for a podcast episode. But if you look on iTunes, you will find that one. Or if you just look, if you like Google "no meat athlete vegan dinner party joke," you will find it. That joke, for those who don't know it, it's not particularly funny, but the joke is how do you tell who the vegan is at a dinner party? And the punchline is, don't worry, they'll tell you. And it's funny to people because That's something that I guess vegans stereotypically do, is they want to tell everyone about this diet that they're on. For some people, it can be because they're excited about it. For other people, it can be that they want to change other people. That is not so much just talking about how great it's going for them, but they actually are out to seeking change in other people. So my whole approach to this, especially at the beginning, once you become comfortable with it, and once you've done it for a while, where people, family, friends have just started to learn this about you, and they've started to change their picture of you in their head as someone who is vegetarian or vegan, then I think you can be totally way more upfront and forward about it, if that's your desire. But at the beginning, I really like to just kind of play it low key and cool. I am not someone who's out there to my reasons for doing this diet, living this lifestyle, are not so that I can be a visible protester of the other way of eating, right? My goal is not go out, make as much of a scene as I can when I go to a restaurant or a party to try to show other people that you can do this. That's not at all. What I want to do when I'm thinking about how am I spreading this message, as well as how am I doing this in a way that feels good and right for me personally, it's to just be a cool friend or family member or whatever about it, and be someone who's really open to talking about it, but someone who's not necessarily the first to bring it up, is kind of putting it on the back burner. For me, that has worked really well. So what I would do if I were going to, let's just give a few examples here. Let's say it's a family function, and most of this family doesn't know. Let me back up. One thing that is really nice about being at the beginning, and a more general strategy, is just, I think it's totally fine when someone asks you what you're doing, like, how come you didn't order a hamburger at lunch today like you usually do? Or how come you're eating that vegetarian or that vegan meal? What I think is really easy to say is, I'm trying out this diet thing, and even if you want to say something like, vegan isn't for me, like I can't imagine myself ever going vegan, but I'm trying out this vegetarian thing right now because it feels good, because of the physical benefits, because I've personally just kind of stopped feeling right about eating animals, whatever your thing is. I think that's so easy to say, so much easier than saying I'm vegan now, or I'm trying to be vegan now. People put up shields and defenses against that stuff. And you mentioned vegan to someone, they want to get defensive about it. It's just how it is, and it's a stereotype that I think really our duty now is to kind of undo that, to think that, get rid of that idea that we're automatically judging anyone who doesn't eat this way. So for me, that worked really well, saying, I'm kind of trying out vegetarian now. I can't imagine ever being vegan. Like, I conceded that point, and that I think built some rapport with someone who also can't imagine being vegan. And I would say, like, even if I did think about it a little bit, I would say I can't really imagine ever being vegan. Like, that seems too extreme to me, but vegetarian is really working well, and I feel good. And even if I'm not 100% vegetarian yet, I really like mixing in these meals. I feel better when I eat these things. It's amazing. That to me is a perfectly good way of explaining what you're doing. And it does it in a way that keeps people interested, right? Because you've identified with them in not being someone who's totally 100% on board into this diet, right? Because if you're that person, suddenly there's not that much in common with you and someone who's maybe more skeptical or just not kind of as evolved along this, thinking about food. So I think when you have something in common, that in this case, even if it's not totally genuine and authentic, being the idea that you're not quite ready to go vegan, or you're kind of skeptical about how that would actually be because it seems so extreme or so difficult to actually do in real life. I think you build that little common rapport, and then when you say, but I'm vegetarian, or I'm experimenting with these vegetarian meals and it's working really well when I eat them, I'm really surprised at how well I feel. Surprise is another good word to use, because then it's not like you're someone who just came into this thing knowing it was going to work, and having already drank the Kool-Aid. But when you say I'm surprised at how well this is working, how great I feel, I think someone can hear that and say, that's really interesting. Maybe I'll actually try that. And if they don't go that far, which is probably not always going to happen, at least I think you kind of, you just, as I said, grease the wheels. It feels like an easy conversation. It's interesting for you and that person. And I don't think you should totally outright lie. Like, if you have a strong, passionate thing that you want to become vegan, I'm not suggesting you need to lie or downplay it. I would suggest, though, that you don't go right to that, right? It's just I'd get there slowly. I'd get there in a way that says, yeah, I've been really thinking about this. I've read some books, rather than saying this is the right answer. This is the only way to eat. I know it because I read this and this and this, and everything else is wrong. People just don't want to identify it. They don't identify with that, and they don't want to believe someone like that. So that's my general approach to talking about this. That sort of thing is summed up, and we go into a lot more detail, a lot more examples in that podcast episode. Again, it's No Meat Athlete Radio. The title was How Not to Be the Punchline of the Vegan at a Dinner Party Joke. And that's a good one. If these issues interest you, listen to that one because it'll go into more depth than this will, just because this particular webinar is covering a broader range of topics. So as I was saying, if it was a family function, I would talk to the host of the party, and I would let them know that I'm eating this way, using the kind of language I just told you. You could even say, I'm going to bring a vegetarian dish, and then make that dish be vegan, right? No, because a vegan dish is a vegetarian dish. But I think offering to bring something rather than expecting someone to make something for you is the way to do it, the way to broach that subject. And I think if you say, look, like, you may not know this about me, I've been eating this way, I've been experimenting with this diet, and I really do want to kind of stick with it for this night or day, whenever this party is. And you say, is it okay if I bring this particular thing, and I'll make enough for everybody so that it'll be just a nice side dish for people to have, but for me, it'll be my main dish. Almost nobody's going to say no to that. First of all, they'll think it's nice. They might be surprised that you brought up this diet in a way that was not the way they were expecting, right? Because we do have this reputation of being preachy and militant. And I think in many cases, the person might even offer to help you out, right? They might say, hey, well, I can make a vegetarian dish, or I could just not put the meat in this one thing and, go from there. I think that's so much better than just showing up and saying, oh, by the way, I'm vegetarian. What can I eat here? And then there not being anything, which is often going to be the case if you didn't plan ahead and say it ahead of time. And then weirdness happening, right? And then you start eating salad because that's all there is for you. And people come up to you all night saying, hey, how come you're eating only that salad? What's wrong? And then you say this, and you're not eating this food, you say. And then suddenly it's like, now people suspect that maybe there's a rift between you and the host. And it's just a mess. Don't get into that stuff. I think being open about it, letting people know what's up, offering as much as you can to help out by bringing your own thing. For me, that's one of the biggest keys. Not expecting anyone to ever cater to you, and just behaving as if you know that you're not planning on that, right? So if it's a food-related event that you're going to, you can eat ahead of time. You can eat the healthy, whatever big meal dinner you're going to have ahead of time, and then when you go to this party or thing, you can snack on things, and you can still be social, but not need to eat that much. But you could just eat the salad. You could just eat the bread. You could say you already ate for whatever reason. You could make up a reason why you already ate. Whatever. I think that's a good general rule. Just eat ahead if you're uncertain about what's the situation going to be at a party or event. Okay, other stuff. And this is right along with. So what I wanted to go to next was like barbecues and things like that, where you're going to something that traditionally is a meat-focused event, right? Because these are difficult, and it could be barbecue, could be going to watch a game at a bar, watch a basketball or football game or whatever, and people are ordering meat and junky food there, and you wonder what you should be doing. This is related to Yvonne's question. Thank you, Yvonne, for asking this and getting us started with questions. She said, how long should I rely on junk food to avoid meat cravings? What Yvonne is referring to, and thank you for listening earlier, Yvonne, is the idea that I think it's totally useful to have junk food, and in many cases that junk food is going to be fake meat products. Use that in the beginning as a tool, as something that's going to help you make this transition by lessening the shock of this type of diet to your lifestyle. So what I mean is, when you show up to this barbecue, now you've got veggie burger to throw on the grill, or veggie hot dogs, or whatever it is. And yes, there's going to be maybe a little awkward thing, maybe a few jokes about why you brought the veggie dogs now. The jokes are going to happen. I mean, I laugh along with them, make a joke about it yourself if you can. I think it's way better than putting a flag in the ground and starting a fight at that point, trying to defend your choice. I really like to just kind of brush it off and make fun of myself, whatever. I know deep down what the reason is for this. And I also know that for me, an approach like this is not a cowardly one that's missing the chance to influence other people. I think this is the best way to influence other people, to make them appreciate your diet eventually, not right then and there, but over the long haul, when they start to see you day in, day out eating this way, or week in, week out, or whatever it is, however often they see you. I think this is the way to create change in other people as well, right? Because they see how normal you can be and still do this. And hopefully experiencing some great physical benefits, energy levels, running, weight loss, whatever it is you start doing because, or fueled by this diet. I think that's so much better than at the beginning planting the flag, starting a fight, and from that moment on having that person be turned off forever against this diet because look what it did to their friend. Look what it made their friend become one of those people suddenly. So anyway, my point is this is not a cowardly approach. This, I think, is the best way to make change. Also happens to be the most comfortable one for keeping your friends and keeping your family members as your friends. So anyway, I suggest doing the fake meat stuff. It's fine. It's not something you want to stay on forever, as I've said before, and that's Yvonne's questions. How long should I rely on it to avoid the meat cravings? Well, I think, Yvonne, it depends how frequently you're doing it. I mean, if it's every single night you're having tofu I think is not a fake meat at all, but like I was thinking tofu dogs or these, fake hot dogs, fake burgers. I would try to get off of that pretty quick. You don't want to be doing this every single night. That's not the point. If you're doing that, you're really not transitioning. What I would hope you would be experiencing, and it may not happen in the course of a month, but what I would hope you'd be experiencing is that the first week, maybe you have the fake meat 3 or 4 times because this whole thing's new to you. And I mean the first week of being vegetarian. So in that case, that's week 3 of our omnivore to vegan program. And maybe that's where you are, Yvonne. So you have it 3-4 times, which is a lot. That's a lot of fake meat in one night or in 1 week. And you might be feeling it after that. But my hope would be that in the next week, maybe it's 1 less time. Maybe it's 2-3 times. Not because that your body has changed, but because mentally you've started to have a different picture of what a vegetarian or vegan meal can be. And you've looked at different options. Maybe you looked at the meal plan thing that I posted today, those 3 sample days, clicked some links in there. Maybe those links led you to other links, and you found a Thai dish that you want to make, right? That, I don't know, has tofu in it, and again, not considering tofu fake meat, because I think that's so minimally processed that you can think of it almost like beans. But you find an interesting dish that is fully vegetarian or vegan that you want to make and doesn't involve the fake meat products. When you do that, you start to shift your picture of what a full and complete meal can be, and that it can exist and be full and complete without meat or a meat substitute in it. And that's a lot of what the cravings are. It's not so much that you need the flavor of this meat. It's that you need this mental check off that says, okay, the meat was in that dish, or the meat-like substance was in that dish, so therefore that was a meal, and I can feel full and feel good about how that feels in my body. I think that's a lot of what meat cravings are. So my hope is that as you actually start trying some dishes that have nothing to do with fake meat or meat and just are purely vegetarian and vegan dishes based on mostly whole foods and are delicious on their own, then I think pretty soon you're not going to want to. So I think it might take you a full month from week 3 of this, when you maybe started having to have the fake meat because you went fully vegetarian. It might take a full month from there where you get to the point, until you get to the point where you say, I really just don't need that anymore. Or you might not even notice, but you've just stopped. You might one day look back and realize, hey, last week I never once had the fake meat. I think that's how it generally goes. So I don't know. I mean, it's you never get to a point, or you don't have to ever get to a point where you never have the fake meat again, right? Like every now and then I have a craving for not usually like a hot dog, but maybe if it's a situational thing where I'm at a baseball game with my son or something, like I'm lucky that where we live, they actually serve veggie dogs at the game. And to me, that's a situation where I don't have any desire to stop eating hot dog or stop eating fake hot dogs, fake meat hot dogs. I mean, it works fine then, and it's once every few months. So why want to change that, right? So like I'm always gonna, I think, crave not so much the food, but what that food meant to that experience, and just the memories that I have associated with that. I think it's fine. So no reason for me to ever eliminate that. Likewise, if I'm cooking a fancy pasta dish and it's a good Sicilian dish that has hot, spicy Italian sausage in the meal with the pasta, with some chickpeas, with some greens, all this really good stuff in there in the pasta sauce, I'll go buy the veggie sausage. And if I can get a really good one, then even better. I want it to be close to the way this meal is supposed to taste, but being 100% plant-based and something I can feel good about. So if you want to call that a meat craving, then so be it. And I don't have any reason for wanting to get rid of that. I think it's fine with the frequency I do it. I think the point is that you want these things to stop being part of your day-to-day. And you want them to just become special things that you do when a situation calls for it. I think in 2 to 3 months, you can be completely at that phase where you're not ever having it, except in these rare instances when you just want to, and it's totally fine. So that's what I think. I think go a whole month without really thinking about I need to stop having this so much. Get to the point where you are comfortable being vegetarian or vegan or wherever it is that you wish to stop, but get to the point where that is comfortable for you, including the fake meat products. The reason is you don't want to get to the point where it's still a struggle and you're having problems, and you've got social stuff going on, and you've got travel issues, and whatever. You're worried about getting enough protein, all these different things going on. Then you tell yourself, oh, and I also shouldn't eat this fake meat anymore because it's not good for me. Well, then you're just kind of piling on problems here. I would get to the point where you are comfortable, where you figured out everything else, and then start thinking about, okay, how can I now tweak this? How can I make incremental improvements in my diet to make it healthier if that's my goal for long term? Okay, so hopefully that answers your question, Yvonne. So that's family and friends. That's kind of it. And I think just gradually, the big story about there is gradually talking about it more and more. Not so much in how much time are you spending talking about this with people, but gradually letting on that you are buying into this more and more. And it could be something that you're sort of doing your right, like fabricating in some way, like saying, kind of feigning not being all that interested at first, but over time, building this story of, hey, this is really working. Okay, I think I'm back. Let me see if I can. Yeah, I don't see a way that I can type a question to ask people, or you people, ask people if I am back. If you can see me, but you should be able to. It looks to me like I'm back. Sorry, I got a message that said my internet connection was lost, and like I said at the beginning, I'm at a new place. So anyway, it's who knows? I thought the internet was reliable, but apparently not totally. But it's working now, as far as I can tell. So I'm just throwing these questions up here so you can see that I'm selecting them just in case you don't actually see me. Mic appears to be on. Okay, good. I'm back. Thank you for the confirmation there. So I want to just start over. I don't know exactly where you. Okay, I'm taking Bill's question again. I don't know where I dropped off, but I think it was probably right at the beginning of this answer because I couldn't get the question to display at the top of the screen. So Celeste has said, I hope it's still recording so I can see it later. Yes, it was still recording the whole time, so there'll probably be some silence in audio and video for a little minute or two on there while it's coming back. But yes, hopefully you're still here, Celeste, and everyone else. So Bill's question is, do you get any flack for raising your kids on a vegan diet, like family, friends, or school? I noticed, for example, someone might say, I noticed that little Gene in his breakfast, lunch, or dinner. And what I said was, no, I actually haven't gotten that flack, which is surprising to me. And for a while, I assumed it was just coincidence or luck. But I've started, now that it's been 6 years since I've been vegetarian and close to 3 since I've been vegan. No, sorry, it's been 6.5 since I've been vegetarian, 4.5 or close to 5 since I've been vegan. That the fact that it still hasn't happened makes me think it's not coincidence. I think it's a few things. I think, first of all, people see that I have this blog and this podcast, and I do this for my job, and I have a book that's published about this. So I think people tend to take those as signals that not only that I have done research about this, and that that they're not going that I I'm not the type who wants to get into arguments about this, but I think people understand that, and I think seeing that, they decide not to bring that conversation up and try to engage me in that question, maybe for fear of looking foolish, because this is something that clearly I've spent a lot of time thinking about and reading about and doing things like that. So I don't know for sure that that's the reason. I think probably though they take it as signals that, yes, I do know what I'm doing when I tell my kids that they can eat this way or that they should eat this way. And by the way, I don't say that they should eat this way. I let them make the choice, and we eat this way at home, and I explain our reasons for doing this so that they can make their own choice when they're out. And they do. So far, nobody's ever chosen meat. When the day that comes that they do, I think I will say, go for it. Like, I want you to experience stuff, and you know our reasons for not eating that now, and I think you should make that decision on your own at some point. So anyway, I think that's one reason. I think the other reason has having to do with these family social issues, that I am so open about it, that maybe people feel like they don't need to have that conversation because we've had the conversation about that before. So I don't go to family functions or friend events trying to preach about protein and nutrition of this diet or anything like that, but those conversations happen. And I think it's because of the way that I've been able to be laid back about this, being able to be cool about this. So there's someone who wants to really ask a genuine question about how the diet works, that the conversation isn't me defending the diet and them attacking it. It's one that's just more open. And I think by having those conversations, people become educated about this. And I think therefore there's not the need to ask the question, because they've heard me tell them the story about where you get protein, and that whole wheat pasta has 15% of its calories coming from protein, and that is in fact the exact percentage, or even a little bit higher than the percentage of protein that I believe we need in the diet, or we need in our diets. Because I've talked to these pro and elite athletes who choose this diet precisely because of what it does for them for sports, and 15% or 12 to 15% is the amount of calories that they get from protein. So that conversation has been had. So I think people start to get the idea that if you eat whole foods, you can eat protein. You'll get the protein you need. I also think that people have started to see my kids and the way my kids eat, and they will see that my kids eat beans and broccoli and grains and foods that other kids wouldn't touch because they're screaming for chicken tenders or who knows what. And my kids don't do that. They don't eat that way. They eat so much healthier than that. I hope that's apparent to someone who looks at how they're eating, at how my kids are eating, and I hope they can see not, oh, that kid's not eating any protein, but instead they see, wow, that kid's actually eating vegetables and beans and actual nuts and seeds and whole foods and fruit and all these foods that we're supposed to be eating, but their kid maybe isn't. So that's how I've handled that. That's I think why I have kind of avoided having that question come up. But it's not like I'm scared of the day it does, because I could say those exact things and I would feel pretty good about that. But good question. Okay, next one is from Denise, and this is good because I wanted to go to a next topic anyway. So let's go to travel, because this is Denise's question. Denise's question topic is about travel, and this is good. This is exactly where I was going to start with this. So the question, of course, is how do you do traveling on a vegan diet or even a vegetarian diet? How do you do travel? Because travel is difficult. And Denise, I'll put her question up in just a minute, is actually asking about road trips in particular. But travel, can also mean flights. It can mean extended stays at hotels. Could mean camping. Could mean, I don't know. I guess there aren't that many more kinds of travel. Cruises. And cruises is probably tough unless you go on a vegan one, or just communicate and ask and figure out what they can do for you. But let me put Denise's question up here. So her question is, on our road trips, we generally do a lot of fast food stops. Do you find that you can go to these types of places when you travel, or do you generally bring your own foods? If so, any that work better? Excellent question, Denise, because this is something I wanted to talk about, and I'm glad you specified some particular questions in here. So one of the funny things about a plant-based diet, or really any very, very healthy diet, is that it creates inconveniences in your life, right? We wouldn't be having this conversation, this webinar, if all it did was create convenience in your life, right? It makes things more difficult in the sense that you've got to plan ahead. You've got to know ahead how you're going to handle the situation, whether that means how you're going to talk about it, or in the case of this question, how are you going to prepare food-wise? What are you going to do so that you don't have to stop at fast food places? So first of all, the easy answer is look up where Chipotle's are, right? Everyone knows the burrito place. I don't think it's super healthy food, but I don't think it's really all that bad either. I think it's a little bit high in sodium, but if you make good choices there, it's got some oil in it too, which some people would say is not bad at all. I would say is not great. But if your burrito otherwise is black beans, because black beans are always vegan at Chipotle, pinto beans are not necessarily, but a lot of them are. So if you ask, they can usually tell you that, or they might have a sign. Or there's sofritas, which is like a tofu thing. But that, onions and peppers, lettuce, the fresh pico de gallo salsa, so it's mostly just chopped tomatoes, guacamole if you want it, which is not unhealthy, just it has fat, but it's from avocado, so that's not a bad thing. And their stuff is very fresh and good, so you can eat a pretty healthy lunch considering that you're on a road trip when you go to Chipotle. So that's one of my favorite stops, and we generally will plan trips these days around that because we don't ever go there otherwise. We never day-to-day say, hey, let's go to Chipotle or let's stop there randomly. It's just on road trips and works great. I look forward to it. Tastes delicious and is vegan. That's one easy tip. Whole Foods is perfect too. If you can find a Whole Foods in a city, and usually there is a Chipotle nearby if there is a Whole Foods. But you can go to their hot bar or their prepared foods bar or wherever and get a really good lunch that most Whole Foods are going to have lots and lots of vegan options for you. That works well. If you're on an extended type of road trip where it's not just one day, Whole Foods is also really good for that because you can pick up fruit and vegetables. In any grocery store, you can do this. But Whole Foods, you're going to find good ones. And you can pick those up, nuts, seeds, trail mix, things like that will keep really well even without refrigeration. I learned all this on my book tour when I didn't know what kind of hotels I'd be at night to night and would spend a lot of time in the car. A lot of time also like in random spots where there wouldn't be Whole Foods. So I had to get it ahead of time, be stocked up on the vegetables and the nuts and seeds and things like that. So Chipotle, Whole Foods are good. Also though, just Happy Cow. Look up happycow.net. It's a website. You've probably heard of it, where you can find what vegan and vegetarian friendly restaurants there are in pretty much any city. So those are the easy places to stop. But I like the other part of your question better. Do you generally bring your own foods? And for a really long time, this is what we did. We prepared much more. I don't know why we've shifted away from that. Maybe because we've just gotten more comfortable with it. But we used to, before like an 8-hour road trip back to Maryland, where I'm from, before we would do that, we would spend like, it might be 30, 40 minutes making stuff for the trip. So some of it was just throwing apples and bananas in a cooler. That was easy. Throwing a bag of trail mix into the cooler, easy. Hummus, sometimes we could bring that, or we might just have pitas and we might spread it spread the hummus on the pitas while we're in the car. Not a hard thing to do, really. A little bit annoying, but not that bad. Similarly, with something like almond butter or any kind of nut butter on bread, we always use Ezekiel bread, which is like a sprouted grain one, but it certainly doesn't have to be that. There are plenty of vegan breads that aren't sprouted grains. So we started making sandwiches like that, and each kid would have 2 or 3 of those sandwiches prepared ahead of time, and so would my wife and I. We might have pretzels or some other snack that we know we're going to want 6 hours into this trip when we're tired of fruit and these other things. So we just kind of learned how it worked. Of course, waters, drinks, things like that. But you pack what stuff is convenient and works. And it's often not that different from the stuff we eat anyway, aside from the fact that it's more kind of like kid food, right? It's kid-friendly sandwiches that have almond butter on them. So what I want to circle back to is what I said about inconvenience, right? That it's kind of inconvenient to eat this way and to have to plan like that, or to only have 2 or 3 stores or restaurants where you could stop at along your way. But that ends up being one of the great benefits of this, is that because it's inconvenient, and not that it even is that much inconvenient anymore, but at first it's inconvenient when it's new. Because of that, you have to plan ahead. And almost nobody, when they take the time to plan ahead what they're going to eat, plans ahead to eat junk food, right? We choose junk food in the moment when we are craving something and it just is there and it seems delicious and we're hungry anyway, so why not pick the one that seems really good and junky? When we're in a state of not that hungry or not right by a fast food place, we can make a better choice and we can plan to eat healthily. This, of course, applies to what I mentioned earlier, like the going out to eat with friends, or they're going to watch a basketball game and knowing that it's going to be everyone having chicken wings at the game. And I don't mean at the game, but like at a bar. What I would start doing is eating at home, and I would just whip up a smoothie really quick and make sure I just dump that into my stomach basically to fill it up so that I wouldn't be that hungry and want wings at the bar. That's a much, much healthier, better choice. Aside from all the ethical stuff about veganism, that's just a healthier choice. And I made it because I took the time to plan what I was going to do, rather than just waiting until I was hungry and then letting what smelled good at the moment and what was nearby, letting that dictate what I would eat. So the inconvenience of this, as much as that might be an argument against it, turns out to be one of the great benefits. And when I think of how many road trips we've gone, how many long road trips, 8-hour road trips, 9-hour road trips, and how many 4-hour and 6-hour and 3-hour drives I've gone on where I did not eat fast food, and every other opportunity to go to the bar with friends, whatever chances there were when I used to eat lots of junk food, those add up. The number of times you do those things, that when you count all those different situations like that, count parties, count birthday cake at parties, brownies when someone brings them to lunch, pizza when someone brings that to work, all these situations are times now that I didn't eat junk food because I had something else, because I couldn't eat the junk food, right? Because my ethical decision to eat this way would not allow me to eat that. But it turns out to be healthier because you end up having to plan ahead and know that if everyone brings pizza to the meeting on Friday at work, that you've got to figure something else out ahead of time because that's not going to do for you. So you eat something else ahead of time. Because you've taken the time to plan it, though, you end up having planned something healthier. So I hope that answers your question, Denise. And my wife and I are going to, or not, I might help at the beginning or be part of it. My wife wants to start a podcast soon, talking about how we handle these types of things and just kind of like, what is in our cooler that we pack when we go on a road trip. Lots of those day-to-day little things. So look out for that, and you'll get lots of answers to things like that precisely. Okay, great question. Thank you, Denise. Keep them coming. We're 5 minutes till 9, so I'm going to try to wrap up the other stuff I've got here. But I'm happy to stop and answer a question as they come in, and we'll see. I can go past 9 if need be. It's not like I'm on a tight schedule, and my allergies and nose seem to be hanging in there because I took some Benadryl, which I never ever do, but had to for this, and had some smelled some of my wife's essential oils. She prescribed me a few to put on my hand and smell them, peppermint and something else, and they seem to be working. So back to what I was saying. So that's travel. That's road trip travel, of course. There's airplane travel and other kinds. If you can bring your stuff with you, like your Blendtec or your Vitamix or whatever blender you like to use, or any other kind of food preparation stuff. Like Instant Pot is one that my wife uses for stuff. I've heard of Chef AJ, who really inspired her a lot. But she always travels with this big, bulky Instant Pot wherever she goes, checks it in bags or whatever is required. If you can do that stuff, do it. Because to take care of breakfast, for example, with the smoothie, and that requiring a blender often, to take care of that is to take care of a meal that is going to be really hard to find a good vegan version of otherwise. So if you can bring that kind of stuff with you, go for it. It doesn't hurt at all. And then once you get somewhere, I mean, how the best way to travel, of course, depends on what your situation is, whether you're camping, whether you have a refrigerator in your hotel room, or who knows. But airport travel, things like that, where you've got a day of flying and all your food opportunities are going to be at airport food courts. There's not a lot you can do, and you got to be okay with eating something that isn't all that healthy for you. Go to the Chinese place that's often in those food courts and get rice and steamed vegetables. And that's not bad. I mean, I'm sure it's not the best kind of vegetables you can eat, but get that with some soy sauce on it. Ends up being pretty good, does the job. Or in a pinch, just eat a bunch of fruit. Like you can always find fruit at the Hudson newsstand that they have at those airports or other similar places. You can find fruits, juice if you need to. I mean, those things, they work. They're fine. They can fill you up. If it seems like fruit could never be a meal, try eating 6 bananas or try eating 4 apples, and you'll be full for the next 2 hours, whatever it takes. And usually that's enough time to get to somewhere that you can, or get closer at least to something that you can eat and will be more substantial. Okay, so that's kind of travel. There's a post on my blog called 25 plus tips about vegan travel from the people who know best or something. And I got 25, or I don't know how many, 28 maybe, kind of well-known personalities. Scott Jurek contributed, I think Rich Roll, many women as well. I mean, it wasn't just these male athletes, but bloggers, people who I know from online, and got them to contribute their ideas and what their best travel tips are. So if you look up No Meat Athlete travel tips, you will find that just by Googling. And all I've got really next is restaurants, which is not a difficult topic. Let me jump to Bill's question here, which is not about restaurants, but that's okay because we're kind of winging this with lots of questions as we go. This is a non-food related question. I started this challenge for health reasons, but found myself having a hard time justifying wearing and using my non-vegan possessions after watching Earthlings. What do transitioning folks do with their non-vegan possessions? Yeah, that's a really good question, Bill. And yeah, I don't know where it really fits in, but this is the webinar to ask that sort of thing, I think. So what I did, and this goes back to the idea of not wanting to waste things. In my early days, really my first 4 years of being vegetarian and then vegan, I made the decision that I was not going to send back food that came out in a restaurant if it came out wrong, right? I would order vegan if it was a pizza and it came out with the wrong kind of cheese on it or with cheese on it when I had said no cheese. Then I made the decision that if I couldn't find someone else to eat that meal, and I'm not the most outgoing, I shouldn't say outgoing, but I'm not the most, I'm I have kind of a shy side to me. So I'm not likely to go to another table at a restaurant and say, hey, can you eat this pizza? I don't want it. I'm not going to eat it. But I don't know. It just, I would sooner just eat it myself. Not anymore, but back in the old days for me, that was kind of my rules. Like if someone messes something up, I'm not going to waste that. An animal already, the suffering happened. I don't believe I'm not about making a scene and throwing down the pizza and walking out of the restaurant. If I needed to, I would eat that pizza. Thankfully, this situation never happened to that kind of extent because it would actually be hard for me to eat a lot of cheese on a pizza, I think, nowadays. But that was kind of what I did at first, and it worked. And I took that same approach with my leather stuff that I had. I said, if I have this belt and an animal has already suffered to make this belt or these shoes or whatever it is, then I'm going to keep wearing it until it wears out. I'm not doing additional harm by that. Yeah, I mean, I guess people might see my leather belt and therefore I've missed an opportunity to wear a non-leather belt and have someone notice that and ask about it and have that conversation. But I don't know. I just the thing I didn't feel right about just throwing away my leather stuff because now I had changed my mind. I don't know. So you could donate it. That would work totally well because that's not waste. Someone else will find it and use it. And that's what I've kind of ended up doing is if I get gifts or someone sends me shoes that are sandals that are made out of leather or something, which has happened with running shoes who make sandals. I'll just donate that, and that's totally fine. My wallet still is leather. It's held up for I don't know how many years now. But I keep kind of looking forward to when it is done, so I can get a non-leather wallet. But I didn't find a need to throw away all my leather things immediately. I'm just kind of like, as they wear out, I get new ones, and the new ones, of course, are not leather, because that's important to me now. So that's my approach. It's not the only approach, right? Some people do just throw away the stuff. They get to a point and they say, I'm not wearing that belt anymore because it's leather, or I'm not going to walk in those shoes anymore because they are the skin of an animal, and I don't feel right about walking around on that. I totally get that, and I can understand that feeling. So it's up to you. I don't think there's any hard and fast rule here. I think you do what feels good. If you're all psyched out of your mind to go replace your leather stuff and get non-leather stuff, and it is fun. I like whenever I do buy a new non-leather item. It makes me feel happy every time I see it or use it or look at it. I don't know what it is, but it just makes me feel like I'm on the right path for myself and I'm doing the right thing. So it is fun for me to do that sort of thing. And I don't think there's a right answer. I think the pace that you want to go with getting rid of that stuff is what you should do. Okay, so last thing I wanted to talk about here was restaurants. Restaurant ordering, I mean, one of the great things about this small steps approach, like everything else, is that you gradually learn to do it, right? So your body has gradually learned you've learned how to plan meals that don't have meat in them. Your body has learned to handle meals that have way more fiber than before, perhaps, that don't have meat, that are different nutrient mix maybe than before, because it's been gradual, small steps at a time. Similarly, there's the restaurant thing. When you first go to a restaurant as a vegan or vegetarian, if you've jumped into it, you're going to have a very hard time finding something to eat if that restaurant isn't vegan or vegetarian friendly. But I think you kind of, and not to mention that you'll also kind of resent it. You'll feel like, wow, here's all this good food, and because of my own choice to be vegan, I can't have any of this stuff. I think that's a potential for resentment and saying I don't want to stick to this diet. So I think gradually learning to say, you immediately from the beginning, you don't even look at the beef section, right? From week 1, hopefully, in our program, because you know that's not for you. So you turn right to the chicken section. Then later on, once that's gone, you just go to the fish section, or you choose restaurants that you know are going to have a lot of fish on the menu because that's what you're eating. Finally, when you get to a vegetarian phase, you skip everything else. You get good at scanning down the list and seeing what potentially could be vegetarian, what maybe would be good if you just ask them to leave the meat out of it. And then same with vegan, right? You start to find the things that you could probably easily get made vegan, even if the menu doesn't have them listed that way. But the things you could tell them to hold the cheese on, or put the sauce on the side, or not serve that sauce at all, or whatever the situation is, you just get better at it because you spend time doing it in gradually more and more restrictive ways. So at first it's not very restrictive. It's just the beef and pork that you're skipping. Later it gets way more restrictive, of course, but you've learned to do it. As far as other little strategies, same as with the family friends things, I would rather kind of just be cool about this than be someone who's there to protest, right? Who goes out to a restaurant knowing that there's nothing vegan, so that you can go there and make a scene and be indignant that they wouldn't have a vegan option for you. I don't like to expect any sort of catering to me to be done. So in that situation, I will say, hey, well, I'm responsible for this situation. I am the one who chooses to eat this way. So I'm going to be happy about this, and I'm going to find something that's good. Even if that's just combining side dishes on the menu, and even if that's just combining the boring side dishes on the menu, right? Often it's just the vegetable of the day. It's steamed vegetables or broccoli or potato or whatever it is that they're doing as a side dish that you can get made vegan. You might just have a plate full of that, which is a weird dinner, no doubt about it. But you get used to it, especially if you can learn to be grateful that there was that option for you. I think it's a good thing. If you've got time to plan ahead, of course, you can eat ahead of time if you know it's going to be a tough situation. You can always just eat salad with lemon juice on it or no dressing. That's not usually very hard to get them to make. Not the best dinner, doesn't taste all that great. Even once you do start to like the taste of vegetables. But I don't know. I think you get used to it. You can feel good about the choices you're making. You feel good when you're done that you've successfully navigated that situation. And everyone knows the feeling of being really stuffed walking out of a restaurant, having eaten way too much. You don't feel that way when you eat vegan most of the time. I mean, I guess if you went to a fancy vegan restaurant, then maybe it's a chance where you will just pig out because there's all this great food that you ordinarily can't order. like, I mean, you usually can't find that much stuff at a restaurant menu, of course. But I don't know. I think I feel so much better after I leave a restaurant these days, just because I'm not totally stuffed, and I can be grateful for that. That even if it's harder to find things to eat, that I get to feel this way when I'm done eating and feel energetic and good and just happy. So, what else? Final thing. Yeah, don't hesitate to ask. Right? I don't really like immediately presenting the waiter with, "Hey, I'm vegan. What can you do for me?" I don't like that, but I would start and say, sometimes I don't use the word vegan. Sometimes I do, sometimes not, depending on what the situation feels like. Sometimes I would say I don't eat meat. Sometimes I say I don't eat animal products, or I don't eat meat and dairy and eggs. Do you have anything I could have? Usually I'll find something on the menu that looks the closest thing, and I could say, hey, could they do this without the sauce on it? Or could they do this in oil instead of butter? Or who knows what the exact specific thing is. And then if they say no, they can't, then I'll say, well, is there anything that they could do? Could they just throw together anything from the kitchen for me? Do they have vegetables in the kitchen that they could combine into a plate for me, and saute it in oil or whatever it's going to take to get that meal out vegan? I just think if you approach it as a nice, cool way, you get the waiter on your side. It's not you're there to protest or I don't know, disrespect this restaurant and the food that they've chosen on the menu. Just that whole mindset goes a long way. Another thing you can do is call ahead of time. You can call the restaurant and say, hey, I'm vegan, or I don't eat meat and dairy, or whatever you think is going to be the problem foods there. And say, is it possible that like, do you have like any kind of vegan option that maybe isn't on the menu? Or would the chef be willing to make something for me that doesn't have meat and dairy and eggs in it? Very often, I'm always surprised, not every time, but I'm surprised often, or surprised at how often the chef will not just be willing to do it, but will be very excited for the challenge of doing something new, because they make the same things night after night. It might change the menu sometimes, but they like being able to show off their what's the word? Flexibility, adaptability, agility as a chef. And they can say, here's what we have on hand tonight. Here's what we're cooking. How can we make this into a vegan dish that's really good? And that's what chefs want to do, right? They want to show that their way of working with food, that they can be artists with it and on the fly, spontaneously make something good the way that it needed to be made. It works a lot. So call ahead if you can. If you can't, sometimes it just still happens in the restaurant. When you mention it, you ask them if they can go ask the chef if they can do anything, and they get excited about it. It's not going to work every time. There are going to be times that it does feel unfair, but I think, because they're not willing to do this, and you think, wow, that's a jerky restaurant. But I think, again, I like to remind myself that I chose this, and that this is not what everyone else does, and I'm responsible for this situation. I think that helps me, just to know that I chose to do this. Yes, it's difficult, but I think it's not difficult, but yes, in that single situation when there's nothing for you to eat, it might feel difficult. But when I think about that, and I think about making it through that situation, and I remember just how many times situations like that have come up where and really every meal where I've chosen not to eat animals, I feel good about that. I feel like I've made something that people would view as a sacrifice. I've made that for something I care about, and that makes me very happy with the choice and very happy with myself. And that's a feeling that I like to have if the situation is there where there's nothing for me to eat. I think we can think on a deeper, higher level than that, rather than be frustrated that we can't fill our stomachs right now with exotic, delicious food, but instead we've got to be a little bit hungry for one evening. I mean, we're talking about 2 hours maybe where you've got to be hungry, and then you get home and you can eat whatever you want. I don't know. I just think it's a better way to look at it than being angry and calling the place unfair and calling the manager and all that stuff. So anyway, that's how I handle restaurants. If there's any questions about that sort of thing, then just let me know. Like I said, these things lend themselves well to specific situations. I think you can probably tell from the answers I've given to questions that once there's a specific situation in mind, pretty easy, I can say, like, here's what I would have done in that situation, or here's what I have done in that situation before. But when it's just talking generally and trying to give general advice about how do you order as a vegan at a restaurant, there's just not that much to really say about it, right? I can give the few strategies that I tend to use, but I think it's easier just to give an example and just answer it. So if there are any more questions about restaurants, family, friend stuff, travel, whatever else there is, that it doesn't matter. It doesn't even have to be about ethical stuff, but whatever you've got, let's do it. If there are any, it's 10 after 9 right now, and football's on, so I will not be sad to wrap it up, but happy, of course, to answer any more that there are, because that's what we do these things for. That's what you're part of this challenge for. So get them in if you got them. I will use this minute of waiting for questions to remind you that I'm going to do another one of these webinars, an unplanned one. Had not thought of doing 5. I thought this 4th one would be good enough. We'd send you off and say, hey, this is vegan week coming up. You're all vegan this week. But I think we should check in at the end, because I don't know. I mean, it doesn't matter to me, right? For the challenge, you paid your money, but I want this to be a lasting thing for as many people as possible. And whether that means be a lasting thing because you do this vegan week coming up and you say, this works and is for me. And hopefully for a lot of people, it will be that way because we've transitioned slowly to get there. I think that's way better than if we just all dove in at once to being vegan. I think we'd lose almost everybody that week. So whether it's that, you say, this is for me, I'm happy, I'm going to keep doing this, or whether you say, this is too extreme right now, or this is less practical than I'm willing to be right now. I need more time being just vegetarian, or even I need more time being pescatarian, where I'm also eating fish. Or maybe you're some combination of vegan and fish, which is, I think, a good one, vegan plus fish. So you're skipping the dairy. You're probably getting almost all the health benefits of a vegan diet. But you're also allowing yourself that flexibility to eat fish, along with a lot of people who argue about the health benefits of eating fish. I personally don't think there's a need to do that at all. And I think you can get into hot water, for lack of a better phrase, with eating fish. There are things in those things, heavy metals and things like that, that can become problematic. So I think it's totally healthy not to eat the fish. And ethically, that's the choice for me. But you could go to vegan plus fish for a while. And because there's not a lot of situations where you do get fish for a lot of people, you'd end up being vegan most of the time. Or maybe you're vegan at home, but when you go out, you'll eat fish. So maybe your answer at the end of this challenge is going to be, that's where I want to be. And if so, I think that's really good, because that's way better than where you started, health-wise, ethical-wise, and for satisfying your own desire for joining this challenge wise. That's a great thing. So I think next week, when we do one more of these webinars and we say, here's the send-off, we can help people figure out where they want to go and what's right for them. And like I said, I think it's a great thing. What I want to do with this thing is have people who are on the path to moving towards vegan, whether they're already there and they're happy with it, or whether they have made some progress and they're going to go back a little bit now, back to say vegan plus fish, or back to vegetarian, or whatever it is. And then over the next few months, very likely, just because I think you've been exposed to these ideas now and you've felt what it felt like, learned what it takes, I think over time you'll start to move towards the diet that you ultimately want to eat for yourself. And it might be vegan, might not be totally vegan. Either one's fine with me, because I'm happy to help you, move along that path towards closer to a plant-based diet, which is really what I want. So that's your reminder. We'll have one more of those. I will send an email about it. It won't necessarily be at this same time slot, just because in our housing situation now, this is not the easiest time slot for me. But we'll see. We'll see when it'll be. I'll send you an email. And of course, recording will always be available like everything else. So Celeste has one question about administrative stuff. Will the Facebook group continue after next week? Yes, it will. There's no reason for me to shut that down. And I'd really like to do these vegan challenges in the future. I would love for this to be kind of the first track people go on when they find No Meat Athlete. So lots and lots of people, tens of thousands of people find No Meat Athlete every day from searches on Google for certain different things. And I think to have this introduction to the diet and this little nudge to say, hey, we're going to do a challenge, join us. I think that's a good thing. So I'm trying to, as much as possible, to kind of automate that stuff so that I'm not having to show up every single week at this time or at other times, because it's not that easy to do that forever. But figure out something where people can do a challenge like this. So that we'll probably just keep using that same Facebook group, assuming that there aren't no one has issues with that. And that means we'll see lots more people coming into it all the time. It'll remain a private, closed group for those who have paid. So we're not going to just make it public and let anybody in, because that would make a mess. It would ruin the group. But we'll keep doing those sort of things. And that means people coming in. That means lots of new comments, people introducing themselves, and that's good. Just prevents the group from becoming stagnant. There's the new energy always coming in. to replace those who have fallen off as far as conversing in the group goes. So yes, that will remain open. No reason for me to change that. I don't know how much people will continue to use it. It's hard for me to tell. But like I said, because there are going to be some new people coming in once we've gotten that kind of stuff set up, which is not right away. It's going to be a while. I think it will kind of keep stimulating the conversation in there. So good question, Celeste. I think we should end it on that note because my nose is suddenly becoming stuffed up again. Maybe you can hear the difference. But we'll wrap up there. Thank you for showing up. I really appreciate your time. I hope this has helped you. I like talking about these issues because I think a lot of people spread this message in a way that is not the best way to spread it. And I think being low key and cool about it can, if it's not a better way, at least it reaches a different group of people who would not be reached by the PETAs of the world or the preachy or militant in your face types, right? And I think maybe that can work for some people, but I think that approach misses a big group of people who are not influenced by that, and in fact are influenced in the other direction by that. So I like this topic. I think it's important, and I would love to see more people with this attitude towards veganism calling themselves vegans out in the world. All right, so thank you very much. Have a good rest of your Sunday night, and I will see you for one more of these things next week, time to be determined. All right, have a good rest of your night. Bye.